Thank you very much. So I now have the absolute pleasure and kicking off our second series of sessions to introduce, I suppose, a legend in Google, really. This is Chewy. He's going to give you an insight into some of the sexier principles, 9 principles, I believe, surrounding Google's innovation culture. However, knowing Chewy as well as I do, I'm as eager as yourselves to see what he's actually going to show us all. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to stage Chewy.
Thanks, Dan. You didn't set the bar too high at all. OK, so where are we? Hello, I'm Chewy. I work at Google in the business development department, or new business development. That means I get to work with products which haven't quite launched yet to try and find partners to launch with. So I get to see some of the cool up-and-coming stuff. You'll be happy to know we're not going to talk about any of that today. We're going to talk about our 9 principles for innovating, or people-drive products. So first of all, the traditional approach with any large organization is the mothership model. And I'm pretty sure most of the people who work at Google here would argue that we still maintain the mothership model. That is, the companies run from the US, from the one location. But actually, that's not true. Across Europe, across Across Europe, across all of the different continents, we've got offices. And each of those offices houses some sort of engineering center. In London, we have our mobile engineering center. Down in Sydney, we've got a lot of expertise going on maps. Zurich is a whole hotbed of activity for a bunch of crazy stuff. So we really try and move our engineers and get them working locally on interesting solutions to problems. Having, for example, our mobile innovation based out of the States wouldn't make a lot of sense because the States are still quite far behind us in cell phone technology and usage. So we have a challenge innovating globally. You know, once we get to be such a large company, how do we continue to stay agile? We do it by keeping engineers in relatively small teams. Most products are built or conceived of by 5 to 10 engineers, and they'll continue to work together in small teams to advance those products. And what it means is they can meet, they can get together, they can sit in the same office, and they can communicate, and they can keep things moving quickly. So even though we've got these, I think, probably 10,000 engineers globally, by keeping them working on small teams and having them spit out little features and little changes and sometimes new products, they can actually work very, very quickly and be incredibly dynamic. We also have a mission that we think withstands time. You guys probably know our mission by heart, and if you don't, I apologize, I'm going to tell it to you again. But it's to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. What does that mean? It means, well, kind of what it says, but also we think that it's something that will never be done. There's always going to be more information created. In fact, when we crawl the web, every time we go out crawling, we find that there's anything between 10 and 25% new content out there. That means the web's growing by as much as a quarter every time we get around to indexing it, which is typically around once a month, seeing the whole web. The best search engine should give you exactly what you want. Now, Eric Schmidt has got into a whole heap of trouble by saying, you know, Google should know what you're doing and be able to turn you the perfect result. But personally speaking, I'd love it if I could type in a search query and have one result, and it was exactly what I needed every time, and I didn't have to scroll through pages of results to find what I was looking for. Now, you as advertisers might not like that because you might want to feature on the search results. But for me as a user, that would be absolutely key, and we'll come back to that in a minute. People should have access to information whenever they want and however they want it. You know, you probably all use Google multiple times per day. Maybe some of you have used it already today. Or you've checked your email. You're accessing information that way. And you're probably doing it on your phone since you're here. Maybe some of you are doing it right now because you've heard all this before. But the point is, we want you to be able to access this information wherever you be. You don't have to be chained to a desk. Maybe you've got a mobile phone. You know, we've seen the iPad, which has almost created a new use case for computers, and who knows what the next few years will hold. There's an interesting stat, or an interesting number that's mentioned in a TED talk, which is that the internet is only 5,000 days old. When you stop to think about that, it's kind of mind-boggling, because imagine what's going to happen in the next 5,000 days. You know, I literally cannot conceive of what we're going to see in 10 years' time, 15 years' time on the internet. It's going to be mind-boggling. Keep it open. This is absolutely key. Everything we do, we try to keep open. I'll talk a bit more about that as well, but it's really, really important. One, that our tools and products are available for use by others, and 2, that your data isn't locked down with us. If you use Gmail, if you use Google Contacts, if you use search, you can export, or analytics, you can export your data and take it to another service. Just because you use Gmail, we think Gmail's awesome, but I know some friends who hate the threading feature. They've used it for a little bit, they don't get on with it, they want to export their emails and put them back in Outlook, they can do that. And that's absolutely vital. In fact, we've got a team called the Data Liberation Front, whose job it is to chase round the product managers who work on product to make sure that a user can download their data and take it to another service in a common open format. And the litmus test, does it stand the test of time? And this is something that's never done. We're always renewing, researching, iterating products. And again, that's something I'll come to later. What we don't do is traditional product management. We don't see a space and think, ooh, we should be in there too. We try to innovate whenever we enter. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember Street Map or Multimap back in the day where you'd click on a button. When you wanted to pan or zoom, it would reload the entire page. It was kind of a frustrating experience. When we looked at moving into the mapping space, we wanted to use a new technology and make the user experience better. So you'll see with Google Maps, when you drag the map, it's not reloading the entire page, it's just reloading the bits of the map that haven't already loaded. We don't think about small niche solutions, short-term thinking, incremental improvement, or vertical solutions. As I said, we want to make big changes to the space. When we moved into search, people didn't start using Google because it was a clean, easy interface, although I suspect that had something to do with it. It was because the results were excellent. I remember the first time someone showed me Google, it was like, you can actually search for code snippets in here. It's amazing. It understands your query. And the results it was returning were really good too. And this was probably 10 years ago. And within about 3 times of using Google, I was on it pretty much all the time, just because the quality of results was so much better. It's really important to us that when we enter a space, when we come for a solution, we do something that makes a difference. We don't go it alone. All information and vision must be shared across all teams. I'll come back to this, but it's really important internally within the company that information is shared with everyone. Everyone should have access to anything they want. Sometimes that backfires on us and we get leaks, but it's part of our culture that every member of the company should be able to find out any piece of information about any product. And finally, we don't forget our guiding principle. Users come first, not money. And I'll show you some examples of how we've applied that to our product development as well. So I'm going to take you through our 9 rules of innovation, which we try and stick to. The first is that hiring is at the heart of all we do. And that may sound really, really obvious, but it's really important to us to hire the right people. I was lucky or unlucky enough, depending on how you look at it, to get 14 interviews to get into Google. It was kind of a bind, but I was joining in both sales and engineering, so I had 7 for each side. And by the end of the 3rd or 4th interview, you're like, really? Is that honestly? How much more can they learn from me? But actually, being in a room, being interviewed for the whole day, gets you used to the pace at which Google operates. You know, you've got to constantly be responding. And so they kind of put you through that make or break procedure to make sure that you can handle the pace. You also get a chance to meet your team and the people you're going to be working with that many interviews. So when you come into the company, it feels like you're already part of an existing group. And that's helpful too. But we make sure that we find people who solve problems in interesting ways. And that's absolutely key. Next slide. No, next slide, please. Sorry. There we go. Everyone can contribute. Ideas come from everywhere and all people. Now, internally within Google, anyone can give feedback to any product manager. Anyone can email anyone, and chances are then that idea isn't going to be ignored. We've had some contests recently, like the big innovation idea internally, where we got our salespeople to come up with ideas for new products. And there were rounds of voting, and they were celebrated, and then there was a winner, and we're looking to implement one of those solutions now. I know salespeople who've gone to product teams and talked about ad tools because they're using these things day to day where sometimes the product managers aren't, and they can feature innovations there. But if we can switch to the browser quickly, what we also like to do is give away as much as we can of our product. So this is code.google.com. I'm an ex-engineer, so I get really excited about code, and this is one of my favorite websites. I'm sad to admit. But within this section here, more products, we have a list of all our APIs and platforms that are available for use by you. Last time I counted, which was a couple of days ago, there were 82. That probably means there are 84 or 85 now. So I'll try. I won't sit here and count them with you now. Apart from the AdWords API, they're completely free to use. So we think that, you know, if you want to map on your website, you shouldn't have to go and speak to the mapping providers. You shouldn't have to work out a technology that's going to put a map on your website. You should be able to use our mapping service. If you want analytics, you shouldn't have to build your own solution. Use Google Analytics. You want to manage your AdWords campaign with a computer to automate keyword bidding? Fine, use the AdWords API. You want account authentication. You know, you don't want to build another user registration system. Fine, use Google Accounts. Chances are, when you're thinking about building a new website or thinking about building a new section of your website or a new microsite or a new product, there's something in here that can help you. And I'm not telling you you have to go with this to build out your entire product, but use what we have to help you get up to speed quickly and prove a business case. As you'll see from one of the sections that I talk about next, rapidly iterating, just getting something out there, is absolutely key. Can we go back to the presentation, please? Share all information. So It's really important to us to share, as I've said, information within the company. We have a Friday meeting every Friday called TGIF. Thank goodness it's Friday, although I've heard some people say thank Google it's Friday, which is a bit brainwashy. But it's really, really, can we switch back to the, to the code? It's really, really important to us that employees are free to ask our senior management whatever questions they want. I don't know how many of you will recognize Google Moderator. It's a crowdsourced question and answer system. We had it internally for a few years, and it was used for things like TGIF, where during the week, it would be announced which member of the management team was speaking on Friday, and people would be able to submit questions, and you could vote them up and down. So within the company, come Friday, the most popular questions would be those that were answered first, and the management would know what issues they had to address. And it works both ways. The advantage is the managers understand what issues are troubling the employees, what are the kind of hot buttons that are going on at the moment. And the employees feel like they're able to ask whatever they want and be answered in an honest way. Moderator was also used by Obama for a town hall meeting. And now it's a free product that you can use, and there's an API, so you can integrate it into your website if you want to. Can we switch back to the presentation, please? There we go. The next, everyone must understand your vision. Now, this might sound slightly different, but it's really, really important for us to make sure that employees understand why they're working on a particular product, why this particular focus area is key. And at the moment, our three main focus areas are local, mobile, and personalization. Now, Ian's going to talk a lot about mobile, so I'll kind of gloss over that. But if we can switch back to the presentation. I hate to harp on about maps, and being in the travel industry, you guys probably know more about location-based services or have more to think about with location-based services than others. But take advantage of this. Most of the queries that you're going to be seeing are going to be around location. You know, flight from somewhere to somewhere, hotel somewhere. Present a map. Show people what's going on near them. If you've got a travel guide site, then put a little map of where it is, allow them to explore, show satellite view, drop in Google Earth, make that experience more interactive. These days with computers and phones, you can actually find out where the user is really easily. There's code that you can drop into your website. There's an API on the phone that you can access to understand where the user is. So if they're searching for information on your site, give them targeted information based on their location. I'd really like to see an app for my phone when I go away on holiday that is just a guide of interesting things to do, curated by the company I've bought the ticket through. And I don't then have to type my location in. I don't have to type my holiday details in. The phone knows where I am. So immediately it should just say, you appear to be in Bali. Here's a really nice restaurant. Here's a really great place to go. There's a party happening there. Feeding me the information without me having to make any effort. I don't want to point it out too obviously because I always think of my mum when I think of an average user. You know, she's the sort of person who still double-clicks links. She doesn't really understand Control-C and Control-V, but she does get edit, copy, edit, paste. And watching her use the computer makes me want to tear my hair out sometimes. But she's closer to an average internet user than probably any of us in this room. And my experience of that is your average internet user is stupid. Sorry, Mum, but it's true. You know, they click on the wrong things. They enter things into the wrong box. They don't click buttons because they're afraid something will break. They don't want to make too many clicks to get to where they're looking for. They're the sort of person who, when they click on a Google search result, if the information isn't immediately on the page they're looking for, rather than search on the site they've been taken to, they'll hit back and hit the next result. So you've got to make it as easy as possible for these people to engage with your content. So the more information you can draw down about them, where they are, their personalization, the better job you can do of feeding them what they need. Let's switch back to the presentation, please. So Morph ideas, don't kill them. This is the idea that, you know, we take a lot of risks. We experiment with a lot of different products every day. Can we switch back to the presentation? I've got Ian's Google Wave account open here. Sorry, Ian, it's all right, there's nothing in there. But Google Wave, I guess somewhat famously, has been killed. As an academic exercise, personally, I believe it was a massive success. 2 product managers and 15 engineers were locked in a cupboard in Sydney for a year and a half and told to come up with a way to communicate on the internet on the understanding that communication on the internet didn't exist today. They did a brilliant job. It kind of combines email and instant messaging and real-time communication. You can add computer programs in to monitor the chat and add rich content. You can drop videos and images in. The problem is communication does exist on the internet, and so no one's going to move from their email and their instant messaging and their document creation over to a new platform. But what we've tried to do is open source as much of the useful content as we can. We've got the Federation Protocol and the Wave API. We've got the real-time communication. And we want to give this code away to the wider world to see what they can make of it. it's really important that what we think is a really interesting feat of engineering and has solved some really interesting communication challenges isn't lost just because the product wasn't a success. You can see this in other ways too. Google AdWords took 4 years to get right. You know, for 4 years, it really wasn't making very much money, and it took us a lot of iterations, a lot of tests, a lot of pulling it apart and rebuilding it to get it to work exactly the way it does, and as well as it does. Another example of a failed product is Google 411 or Goog 411. This was big-ish in the States. It was a voice-automated directory assistance service. So basically like a 118, 118, but with a computer on the other end. While we took that down, what that's actually helped us do is a lot of work with voice recognition on Android and iPhone and mobile. And you can have a play with those features as a link from here. But that's the idea. If we build an interesting technology and it doesn't turn into a meaningful product, don't throw it away. Think about how you can change it and make it work for your users. Can we go back to the presentation, please? Speed matters. Now, this is absolutely key. There's a couple of points in this. One, iterate product. So it's OK to build a product, get it out in beta, think you've got most of the features that users are going to want, and then chuck it out there and see how people interact. I'm not suggesting you could do this with perhaps a ticket purchasing system. You'd obviously want that to work completely. But if you've got a new feature for your website, don't spend 18 months planning it. Don't spend another 18 months trying to perfect it and polish it. That's 3 years. And on the internet, 3 years is a long time. 4 years ago, Facebook didn't even exist. And now pretty much all of us are on it, I would think, every day. If not Facebook, then YouTube. You know, 5 years ago, YouTube wasn't around. But I guarantee you're all going to get sent a YouTube video this week or look at one. One of our directors, I remember saying, what do we do in presentations before YouTube? And so get the product out there, get the feature set out there, and rapidly iterate. See which features users use, and focus on the ones that they engage with. The other part is just overall speed. If we can switch to the video. Thank you. I don't know how many of you have seen this video, but it's to show how fast Google Chrome runs. Can we get these lights off, by any chance? Thank you. This is completely real. So that's the Google Chrome speed tests. And the reason we ended up building a browser was because we felt that the browser space was stagnating. The JavaScript runtime wasn't fast enough. HTML rendering wasn't fast enough. Some of you are balking at those terms. I can see it in your eyes. But the whole point was you'd load a page and it would take too long to load. We thought we could do a better job. And while Chrome isn't the most popular browser by a long shot, what it has done is start a speed war amongst all the browsers. And we really feel that that's a successful outcome. All the other browsers are now running our benchmarks and going, we're faster than Chrome. And frankly, now, it doesn't matter what browser you're running. Chances are you're running something pretty quick. And your experience on the internet is better than once it was. The other thing we know about speed is that users love fast results. This is my favorite search for goats. There's such a plethora of different results. And if you haven't seen fainting goats, go watch it. Genius. But you'll see that we returned about 16 million results in 0.13 seconds. What that means is when a user does a search, we're having to query a whole bunch of different computers, both for natural results, for image results, video, news, and ads, and actually present them. And all that's happening in a fraction of a second, less than a quarter of a second. One of the experiments that we ran looked at the way that users interact with speed, and we just delayed the results by half a second. And we saw a massive drop-off of users. And you would think that people can't detect half a second, but for them it was just enough of a beat to think that, oh, there's something wrong with Google. Maybe I should try Yahoo, or maybe I should try MSN. So it was really interesting to see that. And we'll come back again to that a little bit more later. Can we switch to the presentation again, please? Thank you. Data, data, data. This is my favorite thing. I'm a data geek, love data. How many of you run an analytics package? Keep your hand up if you look at it every month. Every week? Every day? OK, that's more than most. A lot of times I'll go and people will have analytics and they'll kind of look at it once a month and go, well, our hits are up 3%. That's good, isn't it? It's not, obviously. You guys know that. You want to be digging into this data every single day. We were in Manchester last week, and Lauren Luke, Panacea81, who's the makeup girl from YouTube, was talking, and it was really interesting. She had no idea her following was as big in Europe as it was until she tapped into the YouTube Insights data. And you would think someone like that, whose livelihood depends on YouTube, would be looking at that data every single day, but there are still people out there who think, well, I can just grab it once a month, I can check the trends. Use data to your advantage. Use it to work out not only what keywords are working, what marketing campaigns are working, but which parts of your site are effective, which ones can be culled. If there's a huge section of your site that's only getting 3 hits a month, get rid of it, replace it with something else, or at least think about adding content that is going to drive users or drive traffic. Data can also show us some other interesting things. Can we switch to the presentation, the computer quickly, please? I just want to show you this because it makes me laugh. This is from GetClicky, who are another analytics company. They aggregate the browser statistics and show you which browsers are most commonly used. The blue one at the top, Internet Explorer. The dips on the weekends. So when people go home and can use their own computer, they use anything else except Internet Explorer. Sorry, Microsoft. But actually, this website, if you just search for GetClicky browser stats, there's a whole bunch of breakout reports. So mobile web browsers, mobile search engines. They've got a special iPad, Motorola Droid, and Nexus 1 breakout. So you can actually see what devices are being browsed with. And I was quite interested to see on the iPad one, if it loads, that actually the iPad only recently overtook the iPod Touch in terms of Apple's browsing products. The iPhone, obviously, is still way at the top. But have a click around. There's some interesting data that these guys make available. Can we switch back to the... Thank you. Users come first, not money. This is really important to us, too. If we switch back, sorry, one last time. We run a lot of experiments every day, and this sort of falls in with iteration. But it's really important for us to build a product that attracts users. It's really important for us to make sure that the users are engaged with the product before we think about monetization. For 2 years, when Google first ran, there were no ads at all. There wasn't an ad model that had even been thought of. Then we started to experiment with ads, and it's the same with our other products. Maps was around for about 3 years before we started dabbling with ads on it, and we still haven't quite cracked that. And there's a whole bunch of innovation yet to happen in the ad space, but it's fundamental that unless you build great content, unless you build something that really delights and engages users, you can fill it with as many ads as you want, but if the users aren't going to stick around, you're not going to see any traffic, you're not going to see any money, you're not going to see any sales. You've got to make it good for them. Can we switch back to the presentation, please? And then finally, 20% time is at our core. Now this, you ask the salespeople in the room if they get 20% time, they'll probably tell you not. But the engineers are encouraged to take it. And what does this mean? It means they get 1 day a week, or kind of a week a month, or even a month a year if that's the way they want to do it, to work on a project that's interesting to them. Now, a lot of them take it on a Friday. I don't know how well you know your development team, but most engineers aren't working on Fridays. Trust me, they're just pushing the mouse around waiting for the weekend. So if you can give them something that's going to allow them to experiment and play, which they're going to be doing in their own time anyway, you'll see amazing things built. If we can go to the next slide. Some of these products, oh, sorry, back one. No, slides, not computer. Thank you. These products here came out of 20% time. So Google News was actually an experiment off the back of 9/11. When all the news sites went down, one of our engineers said, well, what if we built a system to aggregate all the news and display it in a central place? And that way you'd understand by the volume of news what was interesting and what was trending. So he spent a few days, a few Fridays over the course of a couple of months, kind of cranking together a news aggregation system and took it to one of the product team and said, look at what I've built. And the product team went, hang about, that's genius. Let's turn it into a proper product. Google Translate for iPhone, it's an app for iPhone, but it was written by one of our engineers in his spare time for fun. And Google Suggest was actually an idea that one of the search engineers had, and he wondered how easy it would be to implement. And once we saw how effective it was, it became part of the core product. So encourage your engineers to experiment. Give them a day a week to muck around. Give them the next day, or the same day on the next week, to report what they've actually done so that they're not just pushing the mouse around and surfing YouTube and are actually doing constructive things. But one of the key things with Google Code, code.google.com, all of our APIs can be learned in about half a day. I say this because I know it, I've done it. We don't have formal training or inside training for any of our products at Google. We're told to use the external documentation. And if we can't learn from that, then it's not good enough for developers who are out there trying to learn from it. So we help iterate the code documentation. And what it means is we can go and sit in a room on a Friday afternoon and work through the Maps API or the Checkout API and get a pretty good understanding of what's possible. These days, you don't have the time or the money to allow developers to experiment like that. So making it easy for them to pick up new technology is absolutely key. I hope you found that useful. I think I've run a couple of minutes over, but hopefully we'll get it back on time. Thank you.